Hello, and welcome to this workshop we call Substitute Decision Making to Supported Decision Making. If you are the parent, family member, guardian, or loved one of a young person who lives with a disability, and you have concerns about their ability to live an independent life as an adult, this workshop is for you. But first, my name is Luke Wilson, and I'm a parent training coordinator with the Family Network on Disability, and I would like to welcome you to this workshop. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here, and I'm happy that you're here. Now, before I can get into the meat of the workshop, there's a few things about the Family Network on Disability that I would like to share. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is family-driven and family-focused. We were founded in 1985 when a group of parents came together because their children lived with disabilities, and they provided each other with parent-to-parent or peer-to-peer support and shared information and resources. Now, that group grew into the Family Network on Disabilities, and today we are a nationwide grassroots organization that serves children, youth, and family who lives with disabilities, individuals who may be at risk, those who have special needs, and the professionals, communities, and concerned citizens who both serve and support them. What makes FND beautifully unique, in my opinion, is that the majority of our board of directors and management staff and every single one of our program or field staff are all parents of children who live with disabilities, and in some cases, individuals who live with disabilities themselves and have experienced the systems of care that support them, and in some cases, we're both. Now, it's important to understand that the Family Network on Disabilities is federally funded through grants we receive through the United States Department of Education, and specifically the Office of Special Education Projects, or OSEP, under Part D of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. And now this is important to understand because it means there's never a charge or fee for any of the services, supports, resources, linkage to services, parent-to-parent support, or any other information or service that we provide to you. It's also important to understand that we are not doctors, we're not attorneys, social workers, therapists, or clinicians. We do not offer legal, medical, or clinical advice or guidance in any way or shape or form. What we do offer is our perspective that is rooted in our lived experience as parents of children who live with disabilities. So what does that mean to you? Well, it means that I come to you today offering my extensive experience of over 22 years navigating the multiple systems of care that have served my family and those I have supported through the years. And when we talk about systems of care, we're talking about systems such as the educational system or special education system, the child welfare system, juvenile justice, health, medical, Medicaid, mental health, substance use, social services, and more. As it relates to this workshop, though, I come to you as a parent who has squarely stood in the position of needing to make decisions between substitute decision-making and supported decision-making. In fact, I believed that substitute decision-making was our only option at a point in time, and I'll share more about our story as a family as we get into the workshop. But for now, let's get started. So what are we going to learn? Well, we're going to learn what substitute decision-making is, what supported decision-making is, and how individuals who live with a disability can achieve supported decision-making. So what is substitute decision-making? Well, to answer that question, I would prefer to use the language that's provided by the Florida Department of Children and Families, or DCF, which states substitute decision-making gives guardians the right to make personal decisions on behalf of individuals living with disabilities. So what does that mean? Well, it means that although your loved one who lives with a disability may be reaching the age of majority, or the age of 18, someone else, a guardian, would be making decisions on their behalf. It's also important to understand that establishing substitute decision-making, again, guardianship, is a complex and extensive process that takes time. It involves multiple evaluations by independent professionals to confirm the individual lacks the capacity to make decisions on their own. In other words, we establish that there is truly a need for guardianship through independent evaluators. It involves court proceedings through which a guardian is assigned or guardianship is granted to the individual who's going to be making those decisions. And finally, it's also important to understand that every situation is very different. Every individual under guardianship, though, has the right to petition for restoration of their rights. Florida, along with Georgia and Michigan, expressly state that the individual has the right to have their autonomy and their rights restored at the earliest possible time. So even though we establish, or we may need to establish, guardianship or substituted decision-making, it is the intent that that be reversed, that the individual receive their rights back as early as appropriate and possible. Now, it's also important to understand that this is an incredibly personal decision that can be emotionally challenging or difficult for both family members and the individual who lives with a disability. It is a decision that should not be taken lightly, and I strongly urge those involved who may believe that substitute decision-making is necessary or even supported decision-making, weigh your options carefully, do your research, and do your best to make the best decision you can for your loved one who lives with a disability based upon their unique needs and circumstances, and of course, your family's circumstances and ability to support the young person. So, as we've already stated, in substitute decision-making, it is the guardian who makes personal decisions on behalf of the person who lives with a disability. And you may be wondering who that guardian might be. Well, it could be you as the parent. It could be a grandparent. It could be a sibling, another family member, or it could be someone from a formal guardianship program. Now, speaking of guardianship programs, it's also important to understand that there are both free programs and fee-based programs. But whomever the guardian is, it should be someone who truly has the best interest of the individual in mind. Again, in substitute decision-making, it is the individual who is specified by the court that makes the decisions in the areas of healthcare, medical decisions, educational decisions, selecting and authorizing service providers who are going to provide the assistance or care that the individual may need, where the individual lives, how they spend their day, and how they spend their money, whether that's SSI or SSDI, supplemental security income, or whether it's income from a job. And I'll share some information about our family in just a moment. I just want to share some other information first. So supported decision-making, in contrast, gives people living with disabilities the help they need to make those choices on their own. So in a supported decision-making model, it is actually the individual who lives with a disability who gets the support that they need, but they're the ones who make the informed decisions about all those things we just talked about: where to live, what to do with their day, how to spend their money, their medical options and medical choices for treatment, and any other of those areas. So I'm going to pause here for just a minute and use our family as an example. When my son was about 16 years old, he was stable and everything looked wonderful. He was on target to spend his junior and senior year at Atlantic Technical Institute here in Broward County, and he was going to simultaneously complete his degree while working on college credits towards a vocation that he was passionate about at that time. Unfortunately, we don't know what's going to happen, and we can't control those circumstances. One of the medications, a critical medication for his stability, became toxic in his system. He had to come off that medication, and he was not stable. He was not well. He was not safe. And we worked to the best of our ability to keep him in our home, but eventually he required hospitalization. And when he turned 18, he was not safe or appropriate to bring home. In fact, he wasn't safe to be living in the community, and we had to make other arrangements. And at that point in time, we were really concerned about our ability to stabilize him and for his ability to be able to live independently. So we started that process of establishing guardianship to make sure that he had the care and the resources he needed to be successful. Now, fortunately, it's a long process. We went through the 3 evaluations and through everything that we needed to establish, but while we were doing that, we were continuing to work on stabilizing him and currently trying to develop a supported decision-making model that would better support him and give him a greater quality of life. And fortunately, before it came time to pull that trigger on guardianship, it was clear substitute decision making was the route to go, and so we chose that. So what does it really look like? What does substitute or supported decision making really look like? Well, people with disabilities may need help or support in understanding the information and the choices that are available to them. And so when we talk about supported decision making, we want to make sure that it is person-centered. And when we say person-centered, we mean that the decision-making process is centered around the individual who lives with a disability. It's about what they want. It's about their needs, their hopes, their dreams, their desires, their aspirations, what they want for their future. Support is provided only in those areas where they're absolutely needed. And it may not be necessary to provide support in all areas of life or life domains. For example, the individual may possess the independent living skills to live on their own without a great deal of support, but they might need help managing their finances. Or perhaps they, like my son, have some medical complexity to their disability, and they may need help understanding the medical components or the psychological or psychiatric components or the developmental components, or whatever it may be. It's in the areas that they need and only in those areas. In supported decision making, it's also important to understand that the person who lives with a disability leads the process to the best of their ability. So the main part of supported decision making is making sure that the person's thoughts, their ideas, and their views are not just heard, but that they're honored and respected. As supporters, we encourage them to lead the conversation if at all possible. And if not, we encourage them and work with them to help develop those skills and participate as part of the conversation, and then help them to one day step into that role of leading the discussion. We empower them to discuss their personal preferences, their likes, their dislikes, their hopes, their aspirations, their concerns. We also support them in identifying their strengths and those areas where they need more support in order to reach those goals. And what's beautiful is that studies show that people who exercise those self-determination skills and make their own choices about their future report a greater quality of life than those who do not. So when we talk about the kinds of support that may be needed, you can see them listed on the screen. These are just some examples of how your loved one who lives with a disability might need your support. The areas in which they may need support is specific to their need, their skills and their abilities, their goals, and of course, the areas where they need that extra help. And it's important to understand that this is going to look very different from person to person. Now, how do we choose who helps? Remembering that choosing a supporter is a personal decision, and again, it's different for everyone based upon their needs and ability. But it is the person who lives with a disability who should be the one who makes that decision. And as with substitute decision making, it should be someone who has the best interests of the child in mind or the young person in mind, and it should be somebody with whom they have a strong relationship with and who can communicate with them well. In some cases, it may also be appropriate to have more than one person who helps out. For example, one person may be helping with financial matters, while someone else could be helping with those matters that involve living independently or medical decisions, whatever the case may be. Now, let's use our family as an example. So going back to those important areas that we talked about in the last slide, our family and our son has chosen, more importantly, our son has chosen an approach where those individuals where he communicates with best in certain areas of the life is who he's chosen for support. For example, I used to be his payee and I handled all of his financial matters, but my son really didn't find value in having me be that person. And so we have somebody else doing that who's actually a CPA and is working with him to make sure he truly understands his budget and that he's making financially responsible decisions. He has organic damage to his brain and impairment to his frontal lobe, which challenges his ability to control his impulse. So we have constant conversations before he spends money to make sure that that money is spent wisely, that it's within the budget, and if not, what the consequences might be. Now, he comes to me for a lot of different things, and primarily I take the role in helping him make choices and understand those things that impact his medical care and his mental health care. And so When it comes to this area, my son will take the lead in making the appointments that are necessary, choosing his doctors based upon information that we gather together, and scheduling his appointments. He gets there independently, and when he gets to the doctor's office, he'll either have the doctor call me on the phone or they'll bring me up in a video conference, and I will participate in that meeting to the extent that's necessary. My son also lives with communication disorders that challenge his ability to communicate with professionals and understand and synthesize the information that's being spoken verbally. So having me be there and hearing the conversation to help confirm his understanding and make sure he understands his options and the importance of the choices that he makes is critical. And again, there's other areas that we have where we support him in other ways. For example, he has a job coach that focuses specifically on his employment. In fact, prior to the pandemic, he was getting ready to start a job he was passionate about, and unfortunately, those businesses were one of the first to shut down. We're hopeful that those opportunities will come back once things have returned to whatever they're going to be, right? But he also has a life coach who helps him in independent living areas and helping him make some of those other choices. And then he has a therapist that he works with for those things that may be more personal and that he might not want to talk to dad about. And of course, he has friends that offer support there. So when we look at the roles that the supporter plays, it's important to remember that with the supported decision making, the supporter offers support and guidance, while the individual who lives with the disability is the one who makes the final decision. And that's important. And it's oftentimes difficult for us as parents to let go and allow that to happen, but it's critical for us to do so while we're here to support and allow them to course correct or support them if they do make mistakes and regret those choices. Whatever the case may be, though, in supported decision making, it is the individual who lives with a disability that makes those decisions. And when we think about developing these skills, you know, in order for supported decision making to be successful, it's critical that we as parents and loved ones help support and encourage the development of our children's decision making and self-determination skills as early and as often as we possibly can. One of the strategies I highly recommend is to help your loved one develop these important skills by becoming an active participant in decisions about their education. Students have the right to attend IEP meetings or individualized educational plan meetings at any age, and they must be invited once they turn 14 to what's called the transitional IEP meetings or TIEP meetings. IEP meetings offer an excellent opportunity for young people to learn how to express themselves and express their desires, learning how to advocate for themselves in an appropriate way, and doing so in a safe and supportive environment. But this is where they can learn to develop their voice and express their desires for the future and begin to make those choices while they still have a supportive team around them. And I'll be honest with you and tell you that I struggled with this when my son was younger because the conversation around the table was not always pleasant. There was a long period of time there where my son's abilities and disabilities were misunderstood and he was being consequenced for the very manifestation of his disability, meaning the way his disability manifests made others upset and he received the consequences because they got frustrated with his disability. Until that was resolved, I wasn't really comfortable, but I didn't understand, or what I failed to recognize at that time, is I didn't have to have him participate in the whole meeting. In fact, it's more beneficial to bring them in for a targeted portion of the meeting where you discuss very specific things, such as their thoughts and ideas when it surrounds transition, or what goals or responses to goals and accommodations they may need, and let them give the feedback. Oftentimes they have a perspective that we as professionals and parents don't necessarily have. And again, this helps to support their decisions and their ability to make those decisions independently as they get older. We also have opportunities to help our loved ones who live with disabilities begin to develop those self-determination, problem-solving, and decision-making skills at home. And we can do that by including them in the discussions and decisions that surround the family and impact them through meaningful activities and meaningful discussions that will encourage their engagement and participation in both the discussion and in the decision-making process. And just to give you an example here, if your child is not actively involved and doesn't have interest in what's planned for dinner or hates vegetables, and your idea of a choice or meaningful option is, would you like spinach, broccoli, or cauliflower for dinner? Well, they don't want any one of the three, and if those are the only options, then it's not really meaningful to them. We have to find things where they feel like they've got an investment in the decision that's being made. So other ideas might be, how do we want to spend our free time tonight? What would you like to do? Or where would you like to go on the family vacation? Or something similar. Discussions surrounding their medical needs or their mental health needs or whatever providers you regularly work with to help support them with their disabilities is also critical. I cannot stress the importance of engaging them in those conversations that happen during those appointments as early and often as possible. And again, we do this at an age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate level, but we want that to gradually grow and develop over the course of time so that when they do reach the age of majority or they are living independently, they understand their disability, they understand their medical needs, they understand their needs for care, and they can make those decisions more successfully as independent adults. Engage them in discussions about what their future looks like, what they might want to do as adults from a career standpoint. Where do they want to live? How do they see their life when they are 18, 20, 22, etc.? Families can also help, and there's many different opportunities in which we can support them. So again, start early. Build things into the IEP, allow the youth to make choices as often as they possibly can. Involve them in the process of identifying and setting their own goals, and make sure that they are active participants in life discussions. Now this slide is how can youth get their voice back. I prefer to look at this as how can we help our youth find their voice. And again, attend the IEP meetings, be active participants in doctor's appointments, be actively engaged in discussions and decisions that relate to their post-school plans. And remember that that's going to not only look different for everybody, but college may not be the best option for everyone straight out of high school. It certainly wasn't for my son. Once my son reached the age of majority, and even after we graduated high school, we still weren't ready for continuing our education. We really needed to focus on other things, and we looked at other options for him, and he was involved in those choices. So remember that not everybody's going to have the same thing. Your loved one may be looking for a technical degree, or they may be more interested and appropriate for a supported employment environment, or maybe we're just still trying to learn how to live independently, and a supported living environment might be an option. There are a whole host of possibilities of what happens after school. Just make sure you're open to all the ideas and options that may be best for your loved one, and remember that what they want may be very different than what you foresee for their future. Engaging them in questions and conversations about what they actually want to do and making sure that's tied into their interests and their passions is also very important. I learned very early on with my son that if it didn't spark a passion, if what we were doing with him didn't engage him in something he was interested in, he was simply disinterested, and he wasn't as likely to want to engage and utilize his coping strategies. But with some patience and with a team approach with your child or your loved one who lives with a disability, supported decision making is a valid and wonderful option for those who are able to take advantage of it. And remember, if you do have to go the route of substitute decision making and established guardianship, you want to be involved in that process and make sure that you understand that it is with the intent to restore those rights as soon as possible, because you don't want your loved one who lives with a disability to get lost in the system and lose their rights forever. So with that, we are done with our workshop, but I'd like to share with you some more information about the Family Network on Disabilities. You heard me mention at the very beginning of our workshop that I work within the Parent Education Network, or PEN project. That is the red and blue circular icon in the center of your screen. And Parent Education Network, or PEN, is your PTI, which stands for Parent Training and Information Center. And as your PTI here in South Florida, we are here to offer you information, resources, workshops just like this, linkages to services and providers or referrals, and of course that parent-to-parent or peer-to-peer support from a person who may not have walked your exact path, but has walked enough and understands the disabilities world to be able to listen without judgment and without any stigma, and to understand the perspective of how it is to be, or how it feels to be the parent of a young person who lives with a disability. Now, have no fear. If you are not in the 10 southernmost counties of Florida, we actually have 3 PTIs across the state that support families whose youth live with disabilities. And unfortunately for us, they all 3 fall under the Family Network on Disabilities umbrella, which means there's true collaboration across all 3 of our PTIs in the state of Florida. So if you're not in my area here in southern Florida, perhaps you're just north of me in central Florida, and it would be the Parent Support Network, or PSN, who's going to support you. And if you're not in their territory, then you're most likely north of them, and you're in the northern counties in the Panhandle, and you would be served by parents of the Panhandle Information Network, or POPIN. POPIN, PSN, and PEN are your 3 PTIs, and I'll share some information in just a few moments about how you can reach out to us. Now, in addition to our 3 PTIs here at Family Network on Disabilities, we also have some statewide programs that I'd like to talk to you about, beginning with Family Star, which is our family-to-family health information center of Florida, and it's funded by a grant that we received through the United States Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, and very specifically Health Resources and Services Administration, or HRSA. This program assists families of children and youth with special health care needs to make informed decisions about health care for their children while providing support, training, assistance, and resources. Now, similar to Family Star, we also have our United Families for Children's Mental Health program, which takes a very similar approach, but focusing on serving those families whose youth live with behavioral, emotional, mental health, substance use, or trauma-related disabilities, and behavioral as well. I also want to talk to you about our Advocates program, which I'm very proud to be a part of as a father. Advocates is a statewide program that works to raise awareness and promote the involvement of fathers and father figures in the lives of children who live with disabilities. This program is intended to help provide father-to-father support throughout the state of Florida, and we do a lot of things together. I'm delivering at least one Advocates Live workshop on Facebook every single month, and we also have closed door meetings. When the pandemic passes, I'm hoping that we will have other things in return to doing outings as we did in the past. If you are the father of a young person who lives with a disability, I know how important it can be to be able to connect with other fathers like yourself. It was critical to my success as a parent, and I'd like to reach out to you. You are more welcome to engage me. I'll share my email address at the end. I'd love to hear from you. Likewise, if you are a service provider out there who has a program that very specifically targets fathers and father figures in the lives of children with disabilities, I'd like to hear about you as well. We feature some of these providers every month to help fathers and families who live with disabilities understand the resources that are out there specific to their unique needs. And lastly, we have our FND Special Needs Trust. FND provides comprehensive special need trust services, including services as a trustee, a co-trustee, or trust administrator. We handle all types of special needs trust, including pooled trust, Family Network serves as a trustee for the Family Network on Disabilities National Pooled Trust, which has been proudly serving individuals who live with disabilities since 1999. We also serve as administrators for several other pooled trusts, including FND's Family Pooled Fund, a third-party trust, and of course, many individual special needs trusts as well. The next thing I'd like to bring your attention to is our website, and you can find our website at www.fndusa.org. Again, that's fndusa.org. And we have a great deal of resources on our website, beginning with our ESE downloads, or exceptional student education downloads, that are very simple to understand, one-page documents that break down special education into language that parents can understand, and it helps us understand our rights and how to be active participants and advocates for our children within the special education system. We also have special healthcare resources available on our website. I love our social stories that help young people understand circumstances that are going on in the world and around them. And for those families and parents like myself who have children with severe sensory issues or sensory needs, we have a sound bank out there that you can access to help expose your loved one who lives with a disability to sounds that they are going to encounter in new environments before you get there. And oftentimes we have social stories that link to sound bank, and you can combine those two to help prepare your child for a new environment and things that they will encounter before you can get there, which I have found to be incredibly helpful in minimizing the impact and the stress from those new circumstances. Lastly, we have our FND University, which is a non-accredited online system specifically designed to help parents and professionals learn more about special education at their own pace. And finally, I'd like to share our contact information with you so you know how to reach us. If you need to reach out to someone like myself, or if you need some assistance from the Family Network on Disabilities, please call us at 1-800-825-5736. Again, that's 1-800-825-5736. We have individuals that speak English, Spanish, and Creole, and of course, they will get you connected with someone like myself in your area that can provide you with the support and information and resources that you may need. And again, that number was 1-800-825-5736. Now, if you prefer not to call and you'd rather send an email, that's great too. Our email address is fnd@fndusa.org. Again, that's fnd@fndusa.org. And as promised, I'd also like to share my email address with you. My name again is Luke Wilson. My email address is just a little bit different. Instead of USA, I have FL for Florida in my address. So pay attention. It is lwilson@fndfl.org. Again, that's lwilson@fndfl.org. And with that, again, I want to thank you for being here with me today. I am incredibly grateful for your participation in this workshop. I hope that it's been helpful. Again, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or information, or call our toll-free number. And with that, I'd like to wish you well and ask you to take good care of yourself. Namaste.